You know, I I walked into the room where the event was being held, feeling good, feeling prepared. This was in the 90s, so a few years ago. I had my camera ready to go, business cards in my pocket, and my button down shirt was pressed, sleeves down, unlike right now, and buttoned. I had put thought into what I was wearing. And as the event got closer to starting, I noticed something. Every man entering the room was wearing a suit. I'm in my button down shirt just like I am right now. They all, I didn't get the memo, were wearing a suit. Jackets, ties, structure, presence. And in that moment, one thing changed: how I felt about me and what I was wearing. I actively attempt to be dressed appropriately, but this time I was underdressed. I mean, no one said anything, but did anyone really need to? I could feel it. Maybe you've experienced something like this. Over the years, how photographers dress, how everyone dresses at events, on the job, taking a flight, just going to the grocery store has shifted. More casual in most cases. And because of that, what is or feels appropriate isn't always as clear as it once was. Which leads to a simple question: dress to impress? Or does it matter anymore? Hey there, Lens Legends. Welcome to another episode of the Portrait Profit Show, where we focus on the business side of photography. I'm your host, Jim Landers, your guide on the business side. The Portrait Profit Show is brought to you by Digital Pro Lab and Landers Photography School. For Digital Pro Lab, Amanda and her wonderful, amazing team are going to make you feel like a hero. Now, the reason is because they do things right. And I think the number one reason is because Amanda hires fantastic people. Yeah, not just people here today, gone tomorrow, not just people picking up a paycheck. No, the people she hires actually love this stuff. They're there for years. If you have not gone to Digital Pro Lab in person or ordered online, and let me put that on the screen, you owe it to yourself to go to digitalprolab.com. Digital Pro Lab is going to make you feel like a hero, like I said before. And if you haven't given that a chance yet, you're missing out. Now, you don't know what you don't know, so make attempt, a real attempt to find out. Go to digitalprolab.com to find out more about what Digital Pro Lab can do for you. The show is also sponsored by Landers Photography School. That's me, my company. I teach both the photography side and the business side. And I want to encourage you to take advantage of something that I don't even charge for, and that's to give you a free private session to talk about you, your goals, where you're headed, and hopefully start to plan a path to get there. Go to calendly.com/photoschool/15min. You'll see it on the screen right now. If you go to that URL, you can put yourself on my calendar and we'll talk about you. Now, I want to encourage you to make comments and ask questions throughout the show. And speaking of comments, I want you to go to the comment section right now and enter in hashtag live. That way I know that you're watching us live today on either Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or YouTube. For those watching the replay, please enter in hashtag replay. I also ask that you share the Portrait Profit Show, because that's how people find out. That's how you found out. We're not spending money on ads or anything to promote the show. Nope, we rely on you to share the show. So help build a brighter future by uplifting all photographers and share the Portrait Profit Show. Now, what should a professional photographer wear? Don't think about this from a fashion standpoint or based on anything trend related, and definitely not from a judgment point of view. I mean, there is no one correct way for all photographers to dress. But to some extent, we all put some thought into it. And I want to encourage all of us to do that with intention. Let's say you're at an event with lots of people. Whether we mean to or not, clothing communicates something. It does so before we even speak, before we hand someone a business card, before they've seen our work, before they see us work. People form impressions. I mean, you've heard of first impressions, how you dress, how you carry yourself. These are ways people gain a first impression. It doesn't take words necessarily to gain a first impression of someone. Now, at the same time, what you wear is important. We move, we kneel, we carry equipment, we work long hours. Some of us sweat through outdoor weddings in Texas heat, the extreme humidity of southern U.S. We photograph in grass, mud, sand, churches, barns, hotels, fields, dance floors. So the question is not simply what looks professional. The better question may be what makes sense for the environment, the client, the work being done, and the brand being presented. I think that is where this topic becomes interesting. Now, I know some people are thinking, does this really matter? Or, come on, who cares? I think the honest answer is yes, it does matter. And you should care, but maybe not for the reasons you may assume. This is not necessarily about dressing to impress by wearing something expensive. It's not necessarily about dressing formally or adhering to some standard. And it's not necessarily about impressing people with clothing. This is about awareness and alignment. When we walk into a photography session or event, people notice us. In some instances, we're kind of the star of the show. It's natural to form impressions from appearance, body language, communication, and behavior. Clothing is just one small part of that. And so it matters because photographers are often involved in meaningful moments. We're invited to those meaningful moments. Weddings, family portraits, corporate events, senior portraits, branding sessions, fundraisers, private celebrations. We are often around people during moments that matter to them. So because of that, what we wear can communicate things like professionalism, creativity, approachability, authority, personality, attention to detail, a lot more. Now, does that mean everyone should wear a suit? No. But I do think it means photographers benefit from making intentional choices. So let's talk about the shifting standards. By the way, before I do that, are you feeling this? Do you hear this? Or are you feeling, or is there something about this that catches your attention that you want to add to the conversation? That's what the comment section is for. Go to the comment section. And if you haven't already, enter in hashtag live, letting me know that you're watching live. By the way, I can see a bunch of you have already done that. That's fantastic. I'm glad you guys are here. All right. I was motivated to write this lesson because every once in a while, I see social media discussions about it. Well, let's just say that we photographers can get kind of opinionated. Yeah, to say the least. We absolutely can get opinionated. Part of the reason this topic creates interesting discussion is because standards have shifted over time. And so there's people with the older standards, whether young or old, they stick to those older standards. There's newer standards, or maybe a lack of, however you define it. And it doesn't matter age, young or old. The bottom line is business overall has become more casual. Events themselves have changed. Weddings vary dramatically now, although I haven't seen a black tie wedding in quite some time. In fact, we used to go to, I don't know, a dozen black tie events a year. We go to one a year now. And it's not because we're going to fewer events, but there's just fewer of them. Some weddings are in country clubs. That doesn't mean it's going to be a black tie event. Some are in backyards. Some are barefoot beach ceremonies. Some are black tie. Some are rustic. Some are modern. Some are deeply traditional. Photography itself has changed too. 30 years ago, photographers were often expected to look formal. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a suit, but yeah, you looked good. Business-wise or dress-wise. Today, many photographers intentionally dress in ways that are more practical, more relaxed, or visually aligned with their brand. Many things influence the shift, and social media is certainly one of them. Photographers now see other photographers constantly. What one person considers professional, another photographer sees as overdressed. What one photographer sees as practical, another may view as too casual, not caring enough. And because there is no longer a dominant standard, well, many photographers feel uncertain, and that's why we see the discussions every once in a while on social media. I saw this recently in a Facebook discussion where photographers were sharing what they wear to weddings. The answers were all over the place: dresses, sports coat, black dress pants, leggings, rompers, sneakers, button-down shirts, all black outfits. You know what stood out to me wasn't the clothing, not the clothing itself. It was that photographers were trying to solve very different problems, but there was no indication that they actually realized it. Now, they realized that they were solving their own problems. They didn't realize that their responses were only inwardly looking. They recognized their choices, solved their concerns. They saw that. What they didn't seem to understand, different person, different concerns. Some were prioritizing comfort, some confidence, some mobility, some professionalism. And yeah, there's overlap in those. Some just wanted to blend in. Some were all about branding. Some were thinking about the weather. Pretty smart. Which tells me this is not a fashion discussion. It's a decision-making discussion. You guys resonating with this? Are you hearing something that you recognize, that you feel? Tell me in the comments. You could just say something as simple as yes. By the way, there is a handout for every one of these episodes that I do on the Portrait Profit Show. So if you want them, send me an email, jim@portraitprofits.com, jim@portraitprofits.com. I'll put that up on the screen. You can also enter in the comments, hashtag handout. I'll also see that. Let's talk about 5 variables that are worth considering. It's not limited to these 5. These are just the top 5. And I've mentioned them already, but I want to discuss them just a bit. Instead of asking, what should photographers wear? I think a far more useful question is, what variables should photographers consider when deciding what to wear? So here's the first of 5, the type of event. A photography at a luxury hotel wedding may make very different attire choices than a photographer documenting an outdoor adventure session. Makes sense. No one would argue it. So some of the things that matter are environment, formality, and the expectations of the event. The second is client expectations. Obviously, different clients value different things. Some clients may feel reassured by a photographer who looks polished and formal. Others may feel more comfortable with someone who appears relaxed. Neither is wrong, but one is right for you and your ideal client. Understanding client expectations can help make photographers make the right decisions, intentional decisions. And what's right for you is not necessarily what's right for the next person, because different photographers have different goals, different clients. The third is branding. And this is an important one. A photographer's clothing can absolutely become part of their branding. I've seen it many times over the years. Some photographers intentionally wear branded golf shirts with their logo embroidered on them. Others wear branded t-shirts during outdoor events or high volume sessions because it aligns with the type of business they're building. And of course, that's not the norm in every situation. It makes sense when it's intentional and aligned with the photographer's brand. Let's go to the opposite side. I once knew a wedding photographer who always wore a tuxedo. Yeah, kind of like the wait staff at an expensive restaurant. He always wore a tux. It became part of how people identified this guy. So if he stopped doing it, it'd be like Carrot Top not having red hair. I know that doesn't that particular example doesn't apply to everyone. They don't all understand it, but on a base level, you probably do. Clients knew exactly what to expect. Formality became part of his presentation, part of his brand. This just shows that different photographers position themselves differently. That's all it shows. Luxury photographers may intentionally present themselves differently than documentary photographers. You would expect a photographer specializing in outdoor adventure portraits, to dress differently than someone photographing high-end corporate events. Branding is not just logos and websites. Sometimes branding is the overall impression people get when interacting with you. And whether photographers realize it or not, clothing can influence perception significantly. I remember a bride who hired a photographer with multiple photographers working with him. She did not realize another photographer would be photographing her wedding. But that alone didn't bother her too much. What bothered her was how the photographer that did show up was dressed. Her event was at a nice place. Everyone was dressed nicely. No one was wearing jeans. Her photographer showed up wearing jeans and a plain white undershirt. Pretty much everyone at her wedding was in a dress or a coat and tie. She felt it communicated disrespect towards her wedding. Now, here's the important part of that story that you might not have considered. She didn't like her wedding photography. when she saw the photographs. She did not like them. The photography itself was actually good. I saw it. But her perception of the photographer had already negatively influenced her before she ever saw those images. Man, that story stayed with me because it demonstrated something important. People do not separate presentation from perception as cleanly as photographers sometimes think they do. You may think it doesn't matter. In my opinion, you're wrong if you think it doesn't matter. That does not mean photographers should always dress formally. It doesn't mean that. It does mean attire can influence how professionalism, respect, and value are perceived long before clients evaluate the photographs themselves. You feeling this? Do you have an example of that you can share in the comments? If you haven't already, enter in hashtag live, letting me know that you're watching live. Now, I said there were 5. Here's number 4. Blending in versus standing out. Photographers, just like every other group of people, have an extreme range of philosophies. I'm going to share with you one of mine. Actually, I share lots of them in every episode, but here's one more. There are all types in every group, but you only notice if you choose to pay attention. Now, it's easy to pay attention to the other guys and the extremes of those guys. You're less inclined to think about the extremes of your own group. Too many people exist with blinders on every day. It's because it's easier. I understand it, but it does not lead to an open mind. Some photographers want to blend into an event. I think that's great. Others want to stand out, maybe just slightly, but as identifiable professionals. Some intentionally dress similarly to guests. Others intentionally dress more like the staff. This sharing my opinion does not say you need to dress in any of those ways, because there is no universal right way. There is only the way that is right for you in that situation. Number 5 of 5, comfort and functionality. When I mentioned to one of my coaching clients that I was writing this lesson, the conversation quickly shifted towards movement, comfort, weather, long hours. Because for photographers, attire is not only about appearance, it's also about functionality. Photography is physical work. We bend, crouch, carry gear, walk constantly, deal with weather, and often work very long days. A photographer who cannot comfortably function during the job is going to have difficulty performing at their best throughout the day. So practical considerations matter. At the same time, practicality is not the only consideration. Clothing that looks polished but restricts movement, or maybe it causes overheating or becomes distracting during a long day, may not serve the photographer or the client. On the other hand, clothing that feels overly casual for the environment may intentionally affect how professionalism or respect for the occasion is perceived. That's why photographers often find themselves balancing several things at once: professionalism, comfort, mobility, branding, weather, client expectations, and the environment. And those considerations may look very different depending on the photographer, the job, and the business that they're trying to build. Let's move on to the next section. When professionalism meets reality. I'm going to show you a post. I did a screenshot, and I'm going to share that screenshot with you. You may know this photographer. I hope you do. I recently saw a post from photographer Linda Rukavina talking about how she wears, or about what she wears during outdoor weddings in Texas heat. What I appreciated about her perspective was that she was not simply discussing appearance. She was discussing functionality, breathable clothing, movement, comfort, shoes that survive long days, heat management. She even mentioned using rechargeable cooling fans clipped onto a vest during weddings. And although it makes sense, I never would have imagined photographers discussing portable cooling fans as part of wedding attire. Never crossed my mind. But that is smart. It's her reality. Could be yours. And I think it's important. Professional attire that prevents someone from functioning professionally creates its own problems. A photographer who's overheated, distracted, uncomfortable, physically struggling is not necessarily serving clients well simply because the clothing looked good. At the same time, photographers also need to consider the environment they're entering. So there's a balancing act between professionalism, practicality, comfort, branding, environment, and client expectations. And that balancing act will not look identical for every photographer. If you know Linda, will you tag her in the comments, letting her know that I mentioned her during the show? Linda Rukavina. I'll take her off and put me back on. There we go. You know, sometimes the challenge is not only balancing professionalism and practicality. Sometimes the environment itself turns out to be different than expected. I mean, we can plan, but we all know things don't always go to plan. An experience reinforced something important for me. Sometimes attire decisions are not only about professionalism, sometimes they are about understanding the actual environment that you're walking into. But occasionally, you don't fully understand that until you arrive. I'm going to tell you a story. This was another time where I thought I was showing up dressed appropriately. Based on the information I had, I was. Yeah, I had been hired by a magazine to photograph homes and the realtors of Horseshoe Bay. This is in Central Texas. If you live in Central Texas, you know of Horseshoe Bay. It's an affluent area, large homes on the water. Yeah, pretty cool. All right, you have a picture in your head. From what I had been told, I thought I was photographing in offices and inside the homes. And maybe outside the homes too, but mostly indoors, but with professionals, realtors. So I showed up dressed like I am right now, button down shirt, sleeves rolled up just below the elbows, and khaki slacks. Professional, comfortable, reasonable for the assignment. When I arrived, after some pleasantries, the client looked at me and said, "Let's go to the pro shop and get you some proper clothes." Based on my reaction, yeah, sometimes your face talks more than your words. She knew I had no idea what she meant, so she explained, "We're photographing the homes from the water. Apparently, they had arranged a boat. Everything was ready to go. The client had communicated that to the magazine, but somewhere along the way, that detail never made it to me. Has that ever happened to you? I'm sure it has. And I remember thinking probably exactly what you're thinking right now. It seems like a pretty important detail to leave out, but I was up for it. It sounded like fun to me. Now, thankfully, I did have shorts and tennis shoes in the car. I, I thought I might want to change clothes before the return trip home. That's why I had them. So we walked into the pro shop. I picked out a Horseshoe Bay golf shirt, really pretty shirt, pretty expensive shirt. And they told the store to put it on their tab. Huh. I wasn't expecting that at all, but I welcomed it. I thought that was fantastic. I changed my clothes and we headed out onto the water for several hours photographing homes from the boat. Yeah, I didn't anticipate that, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. Let's bring this show to a close. And then I want to tell you about the next 3 or 4 shows coming up. And you're going to be kind of surprised by them. You're going to be excited. You're going to put them on your calendar. But before that, let's close out this lesson. At the beginning of the episode, I asked, dress to impress. Does it matter anymore? And after thinking through all of the stories and examples, of course, it matters. But it's not the best question. Because the goal isn't to impress people with clothing. The goal is alignment. Does what you wear align with the environment, the client, your branding, your professionalism, your ability to function well, the way you want to be perceived? Yeah, these things probably matter far more than whether something is formal or casual. Different photographers are building different businesses for different clients in different environments. So while there may not be one universal outfit or style of dress for photographers, I do think there is a universal standard, which is alignment with you, with yourself, your goals, your direction. We benefit from making intentional decisions based on what to wear because clothing is a form of communication. It's not everything. It isn't more than your work. It's not more than your service. It's not more than your character, but it is a communication tool. And thoughtful photographers think about what they are communicating. You know, as you probably know, the Portrait Profit Show is something I bring to you every single Monday. So I want to share with you what is coming up next. In 1 week from today, let's see if I can make that a bit larger. There we go. By the way, I know on Instagram it kind of is funky. It may be too small to see it, but on Facebook and YouTube, it is filling the screen. Huh. By the way, I haven't gone over to the comment section in quite a while, and man, a lot of you have commented, and I really appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, these are good. I appreciate all these comments, Robert. I'm gonna click on just one because it's super short and I get a kick out of it. I'm gonna take this back off. I'll bring it back on. Robert says, photographers opinionated? No. Yep, my sentiments. Exactly. All right. So in 1 week from today, I'm going to bring on someone who really knows this stuff. And by the way, on the second Monday of each month, next Monday is June 8th, and that's the second Monday. Today's the first Monday. So in 1 week from today at 6:30, the Great Reset. I'm bringing on special guest Yusuf Chowdhury. So the Great Reset is here. The photography industry isn't just changing, the reset button has been pushed. I'm bringing on digital performance expert Yusuf Chowdhury to pull back the curtain on what it actually takes to stay profitable in the AI era. Put it on your calendar. 1 week from today, June 8th, 6:30 in the evening. The second Monday of each month, we move it to 6:30 in the evening. So 6:30, the Great Reset. And then 1 week after that, on Monday, June 15th, custom photography project. Now, when a potential client asks for a custom photography project, the real question is rarely just, what should I charge? Before you name a price, you need to define the need, structure the offer, separate your time from image usage, and guide the conversation with confidence. If you ever felt unsure about how to price a photography opportunity, this will help you approach it with a clearer path. So that is 2 weeks from today on June, put that up one more time, June 15th. Put that on your calendar. And let's talk about 2 more. On Monday, June 22nd, always moving, never arriving. You're constantly learning, trying new ideas, putting in lots of effort, yet somehow you still feel like you're not arriving anywhere meaningful. If your direction is built on what you see others doing, your direction will always be changing. There's lots of good ideas out there. So we'll explore why reactive vision keeps us moving, but never arriving. Why intentional vision helps us move in the direction that's right for us, and how to know whether your efforts are leading you towards the life and the business you want. That's June 22nd at noon. And then to round out the month of June, terminal clarity. Portrait photographers think about cameras, lighting, editing, pricing, marketing, lots of things. They know how to create a portrait. And they think they understand what they're creating until something comes along and you realize you now understand it even better. A single event, a single conversation strips away the fog that they never knew existed and reveals what portrait photography has always been about. Your eyes are going to be opened on this one. Some of you have experienced what I'll be discussing, but a lot of you haven't. But once you have, your point of view changes. Your understanding increases more than you ever thought it could. And I'm going to share that with you. at the end of the month, June 29th at noon, for terminal clarity. Yeah, there's a reason why I call it terminal. Put it on your calendar. Add all of these. It's every Monday. So you'd think it wouldn't be, you think it wouldn't be hard to remember, but you're busy. You've got a lot of things going on in your life. So therefore, the only way you're going to remember these Portrait Profit shows are if you add them to your calendar. Take that step. You have to do that on your own. I can't do that part for you. I can spend hours preparing each one of these lessons. I spend about 12 hours on each one of these lessons. And that means every single week. And I don't charge you anything for them. All I ask is that you put it on your calendar and you share it with others. That's it. Lens Legends, thank you for joining me in this episode of the Portrait Profit Show. If this conversation made you think a little differently about how you approach attire as a photographer, I would love to hear your thoughts. Some of you have already shared your thoughts. I welcome them at any time because I do go back and I look, especially if you tag me. Do you prioritize professionalism, comfort, blending in, branding, functionality? I'm also curious, has your thinking changed over the years? Thank you, Lens Legends, for your time and attention here today. And thank you for the hard work you put into building a photography business that matters. For Landers Photography School, I'll put this up on the screen. For Landers Photography School and Digital Pro Lab, I'm bringing you the weekly Portrait Profit Show. I appreciate you. I think you are amazing. And I can't wait to see you next week. Bye for now.